And the idea that it's anti-Semitic to boycott a state or a government is so offensive and so idiotic. Even denying them disaster preparedness funds. And then they secretly removed it, and then they went on and said, this is fake news. And a bunch of Trump supporters were like, oh, it's fake news. I knew it. They would never do that.
I'm just laughing at Glenn's voice change to reveal the absurdity that is this recent decision by the Trump administration to withhold federal disaster relief from people criticizing Israel. Glenn gets into the specifics of this and how they tried to turn face from it and save face from it, which ultimately didn't exactly do that in the first place. We'll get his take on that. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
This is so ironic. The conservative movement spent a full decade mocking claims of racism, mocking claims that people on college campuses need anti-discrimination protection. And then the Trump administration gets in and makes it one of their top priorities, one of their very top priorities, to declare that there's a racism epidemic in the United States, but only against one group. There's only one genuinely marginalized, true victim group in the United States, and that's American Jews.
Yep, this is the red flavor of wokeness, the Zionist flavor of wokeness. He's right. That's exactly what they did.
And the Trump administration has been doing everything, no matter how much it harms American citizens or American interests, to purge the world of this one form of bigotry that it claims has pervaded all American institutions. And it will sacrifice anything to do so. Now, this is not new. This is just how extreme these things can get in the framework of American politics. Earlier today, they released this policy as described by Reuters. U.S. links $1.9 billion in state disaster funds to Israel boycott stance. Quote, U.S. states and cities that boycott Israeli companies will be denied federal aid for natural disaster preparedness, the Trump administration has announced, tying routine federal funding to its political stance. The Federal Emergency Management Agency stated in grant notices posted on Friday that states must follow its, quote, terms and conditions. Those conditions require that they certify they will not sever, quote, commercial relations specifically with Israeli companies if they need to qualify for funding.
So get a load of this. This really reveals what kind of plague the Israel First mentality is, because even the money, we already have a lot of taxpayer money sent down the drain to Israel, you know, in the form of $20 billion last year, while we have our own problems to deal with domestically, mind you. But even the money that isn't directly sent to Israel, they still earmark it in these crazy ways for Israel. Because if you boycott an Israeli company, and there are many in the NASDAQ and cybersecurity, there's many different companies, and you know, they're inextricably tied to the government. That's the reason for this stance, because they don't want you to be a critic of Israel. Companies like CyberArk and LTech and things like that. If you happen to levy any kind of critical stance or that, well, hey, if your homes or businesses are knocked down by a hurricane, we're not going to help you. Why? Well, it's Israel first. We said America first, but really it's Israel first, because that's our number one priority. And by the way, Israel's borders are much more sacrosanct than the United States. That's really the mentality and sensibilities that the feds have with this. It's absolutely pathetic.
The requirement applies to at least $1.9 billion that states rely on to cover search and rescue equipment, emergency manager salaries, and backup power systems, among other expenses, according to 11 agency grant notices reviewed by Reuters. Quote, Homeland Security will enforce all anti-discrimination laws and policies, including as it relates to the BDS movement, which is expressly grounded in anti-Semitism, a spokesperson for the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, said in a statement.
Of course she did, because their grand dream is to run a propaganda campaign that conflates anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. That's the innate response that you get if you dare to criticize Israel. But beyond that, now we're going to withhold federal funding for disaster relief. It's so preposterous, and it really shows you where this administration's priorities are they're not especially unique in this way. Most American administrations have been influenced heavily by AIPAC, but the amount of influence that's been pushed into this administration and just, pervades it and seeps out of it in a way that can't be ignored is almost unprecedented and, inescapable.
Can I just stop there for a second? The campaign to boycott Israel was based on exactly the same model that was used by American citizens to boycott apartheid South Africa in the 1980s, which is, this is a unjust government engaged in unjust acts, and we shouldn't reward them by doing business with them, by visiting. We're going to boycott them. There was a boycott of South Africa. It went on for years. Americans participated in it, Europeans. No one ever said that was racist, or no one got punished for that. And as I said, there have been boycott campaigns, successful ones, aimed at American states by Americans, by other states. They wanted to punish Georgia for their voting rights law. They lost huge amounts of business. They lost the Major League Baseball All-Star game, or a big NBA game. They had huge numbers of conventions and conferences pulled out of Georgia. They did the same thing to North Carolina and Indiana, because they enacted bathroom bills that say that you have to use the bathroom that corresponds with your biological sex at birth to prevent trans people from using the bathrooms with which they identify. And a lot of American states, other American states, and a lot of American citizens and American businesses boycotted Indiana and North Carolina. And no one got punished under the Trump administration, the first Trump administration, for that. That was totally fine. You're allowed to boycott anybody except Israel.
Yeah, man, that is saying it right, perfectly correct. And I put this in my Candace video where people talked about how people on both sides of the political aisle in America conduct boycotts against individual American states and sometimes localities within those states for various policies that are enacted there. In terms of right-wingers in California, hey, for their soft immigration stance, we might not buy from California properties. Or left-wingers, when it comes to goods and services from, southern states, we won't buy goods and services there because of their, strict and rigid abortion laws and anti-abortion laws, I should say. And this is just a normal phenomenon in America. It's American to make these independent decisions for yourself. But when you make these decisions, when it comes to Israel and critiquing Israel and U.S. aid to Israel, all bets are off. All the funds are withheld. It really, again, shows the priorities of this administration. And yeah, by the way, I bet this is going to make more people sympathetic to what Israel's doing in Gaza, by the way, which is a genocide, by the way. And he's right about South Africa, right? There was a massive boycott against South Africa for its practices and holding an apartheid state there throughout the 80s. And, you never got this kind of reprisal, and that's because South Africa didn't have a lobby, a foreign lobby within the United States with the power of the Israel lobby, and that's what AIPAC represents today.
And the idea that it's anti-Semitic to boycott a state or a government is so offensive and so idiotic. In fact, the hate speech codes that the Trump administration are forcing American colleges to adopt that expand the list of ideas you're not allowed to express, which we've gone over before, the IHRA definition, includes as anti-Semitism an example that says holding all Jews responsible for the state of Israel's actions. Because the state of Israel is not Jewish people. You can oppose and object to and criticize and campaign against the state of Israel and its government without being racist. You could do that you can criticize the government of Nigeria without being guilty of anti-black racism. You can criticize the government of Saudi Arabia without being guilty of Islamophobia. Everybody understands this except when it comes to Israel.
This is exactly correct. Their dream, again, in this propaganda campaign is to conflate Israel with all of Judaism. And by doing that, they can just dispose of any criticism against Israel by saying, hey, it's just anti-Semitic. They've tried it for ages. It's starting to work less and less, I think, as this becomes exposed, as stories like this get out, because the lunacy is just unavoidable. You can't maintain any sincere belief that this is, a just policy But that's what they maintain. But we would never accept it if it's foreign countries. If, someone criticized the Russian government in particular, because no, that's the government the CIA wants you to hate. That wouldn't be racist if you criticize Russia and Russian policy and Russian leaders and the Russian government, etc. You'd never get that kind of response from people because they want a war with Russia. They want this proxy war to go on with Russia. That's just one example. He just named some others, but in no other case do we think that criticism against the other, 192 countries in the world would be a criticism against the race and ethnicity of the people within those countries when you're only pointing it to the government to begin with. So yeah, he's right.
And this is how the Trump administration is justifying punishing American citizens, even denying them disaster preparedness funds to keep them safe and secure. The first duty of any government, to keep its citizens safe. The government is saying, no, we're not. That's not our first priority. Our first priority is to protect Israel.
That is definitely their first priority.
That's your America First government. It goes on. The requirement is the Trump administration's latest effort to use federal funding to promote its views on Israel. The American Jewish Committee supports the Trump administration's policy. What a shock, said Holly Huffengale, the group's director of anti-Semitism policy. The AGC is an advocacy group that supports Israel. Under one of the grant notices posted on Friday, FEMA will require major cities to agree to the Israel policy to receive a cut of the $553 million set aside to prevent terrorism in dense areas. And it goes on to describe all the different people who are going to lose funding. Now, this was announced through this Department of Homeland Security policy, which is the Department of Homeland Security Standard Terms and Conditions. This was from April, and then there was another one applied today. So under Section 17, entitled Anti-Discrimination, it says recipients must comply with all applicable federal anti-discrimination laws material to the government's payment decision.
And by anti-discrimination laws, they mean anything that would be individual choices that consumers make to buy products that happen to come from countries or companies that are that have the origin of certain countries over others.
And then in paragraph D, it defines discriminatory prohibited boycott as refusing to deal, cutting commercial relations, or otherwise limiting commercial relations specifically with Israeli companies or with companies doing business in or with Israel, or authorized by, licensed, or organized under the laws of Israel to do business. Do you see that you can boycott anyone else that you want? Boycott French businesses, Peruvian businesses, Korean businesses, Japanese businesses, Russian businesses, Iranian businesses, Cuban businesses, whatever, anything you want. Even boycott businesses of North Carolina and Georgia and Indiana, and you'll be fine. Just under these guidelines of the federal government, the only prohibited boycott is one aimed at this one special, sacred foreign country whose interest comes even before disaster preparedness relief for American citizens. The government will deny that funding to American citizens if they don't have the right views on Israel.
Exactly right. I mean, this just really shows the hypocrisy of an administration that dared to say that America first is our mantra. That's our creed. That's our cornerstone principle, because previous administrations have not exactly been America first. And then they're going to unveil this madness. And some people still have the gall to say that Qatar has more influence than Israel in our government. I'm sorry. This is preposterous, and it can just be seen by normal people all across America when you see schemes like this. And I'm so glad it's actually getting some reporting.
And the fact that this is done under the title of America First is about the biggest joke you can imagine.
Right.
All day long, there was an eruption of outrage from this Trump administration announcement. Like, what do you mean? Why would American citizens be denied disaster relief if they don't agree not to boycott Israel? It's like you're allowed to boycott whoever you want as an American citizen. And in response to that, Homeland Security had to give a statement because a lot of even their own supporters were extremely confused and angry at how this could be. And they just denied it was true by saying this. They didn't really deny it, though. They said, there is no FEMA requirement tied to Israel on any current NOFO. No states have lost funding and no new conditions have been imposed. FEMA grants remain governed by existing law and policy and not political litmus tests. But then it goes on to say that that DHS will enforce all anti-discrimination laws and policies, including as it relates to the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, which is expressly grounded in anti-Semitism. Those who engage in racial discrimination should not receive a single dollar of federal funding.
So not only is that a lie, there was a requirement tied to boycotts against Israeli companies. They're saying that, hey, that wasn't the case. Well, they actually pulled it after this outcry of criticism toward it after this broke in the news. And then in the second paragraph there that he highlighted, they're still saying, hey, we're still going to enforce this regardless of it being in the bill or not. So they're doing a quasi-turn face that isn't a turn face. It's just stupid, and they're not going to escape the fervor that this is causing.
So on the one hand, they're denying it, but then they're reiterating the fact that, yeah, if you're part of the Boycott Israel movement as an American citizen, you will be denied even a single dollar of federal funding. Even if a hurricane destroys your house, or even if it's a program to prevent a hurricane from destroying your house and killing you and your family as an American citizen on American soil, if you participate in any way in a boycott of Israel, the government's saying you will not get a dollar from us, American citizens. Now, what actually happened here is that we showed you the government website had that language I just read to you. And it was only about an hour ago now, maybe even less, 45 minutes, that the government clandestinely removed that language. And then they come out and they say, oh, this is fake news. We're not imposing any new conditions. They had that language up all day in this document. And then they secretly removed it, and then they went on and said, this is fake news. And a bunch of Trump supporters were like, oh, it's fake news. I knew it. They would never do that. It's like you can see the language still up on their site. And then there's a new version where they removed it in response to the anger. And yet at the same time, they're preserving this language that lets them do exactly that.
I can't get over Glenn's voice change, poking fun at this insanity. It's so funny. He says it perfectly there, but he's just right. I mean, just looking at this historically, one of the most time-honored American rights is the idea of economic sovereignty to some effect. We can make individual choices about the products and services we buy. Yeah, the federal government throws wrenches in it and tries to limit that to some extent through a massive regulatory apparatus that, only allows certain products and services to come to market, especially in highly regulated sectors like, food and pharmaceutical and telecom and tech. But mostly there is a lot of consumer choice in what we buy and the behavior we make with our dollars. It's, I think, voting more significantly than the ballot box is voting through the products and services that we purchase. And it's an American right to use whatever criteria you want to make those purchases. But in the eyes of the feds, if you make those purchases in the wrong direction, and that is things that are critical of Israel and alternatives to Israeli goods, you're going to suffer through this disaster relief withholding, and that's what we're going to get. The Department of Homeland Security reiterated that in that tweet. They said, hey, this is not part of any kind of DHS guidelines. Well, it was. You're just responding because there was an outcry about it, deservedly so, by the way. But they're also just going to still enforce it, like Glenn just said there. So you have this rank hypocrisy, and it's issues like this, and the genocide in Gaza, and the war in Iran, which makes a lot of people believe that this administration is hardly America first. It's Israel first, and it's unavoidable, it's inescapable. Even some of Trump's biggest supporters have acknowledged that and have said, well, what's the deal with this? One big example that comes to mind with me is Matt Walsh. He's pointed out this madness, not only in terms of, threatening Canada with trade restrictions because they wanted to acknowledge a Palestinian state, but also in this incident, people like Matt Walsh should be low-hanging fruit for Trump's America First and MAGA union. And I guess, coalition. But even people like that are being lost because this is so insane. You just can't avoid how idiotic and how glaring the hypocrisy is in cases like this. And if you think this is going to get Americans to be more sympathetic to what Israel's doing in Gaza, I think you have got to be mistaken. Even as Israel talks about now annexing and occupying Gaza. Netanyahu has said yesterday the decision was made to occupy Gaza. Is this going to increase anti-Semitism or lessen it by making policies like this? I have my own opinion on this, but I want to hear yours. Let me know down below. Do you agree with Glenn? Is this going to help U.S. relations with Israel? Do you think this will keep the American base in lockstep supporting Israel? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Also subscribe to Glenn. He does great reporting on stories like this, and I really appreciate that. And please consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking the join button below. If you do that, you can support the channel. And as thanks for that, I'm going to give you access to all my videos before they go live on YouTube. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.